What does she need a rifle for? To take selfies? A group of young soldiers burst into laughter as the small woman with neatly tied hair stepped up to the weapons distribution table and requested a DSR, Precision Talon. The weapons officer shrugged and handed her an old M4 rifle. This is more suitable for logistics support, like you. She remained silent, not angry, just calmly pointed to the locked case below. Talon, serial 017. I want that one. The entire training facility fell silent. Her name was Elena Richter, 31 years old, a European logistics technician with dark brown hair tied back in a practical knot, small frame and calm eyes that seemed to notice everything while revealing nothing. She had recently transferred to Alpine Ridge Base, buried deep in the snowy mountain range, famous for its brutal training courses designed for SEALs, special forces, and military contractors. Elena wasn't part of any combat team. She had signed a logistics support contract. Her main job was inventory management, rifle maintenance, monitoring target sensors, and overseeing supply lines. Every morning when soldiers headed to the training grounds, she would quietly clean the weapons storage, check data logs, and ensure every piece of equipment was functioning perfectly. Nobody paid attention, nobody asked her name. Some of the younger soldiers called her Miss Maintenance, but they began to notice something unusual. Every time there was a weapons malfunction report, she would fix it in under 4 minutes. She was also the only person who memorized every serial number and the barrel deviation of each sniper rifle in the armory. During the third week of training, the center announced a weapon selection test. Anyone who wanted could choose one rifle and fire a single shot at an 800-meter target. It was meant to be a fun challenge, a way for soldiers to test different weapons and show off their skills. Elena stepped up to the table and spoke clearly. I want the DSR Talon, serial 017, the one marked restricted access. The entire training ground erupted in laughter. Someone shouted, "Who does she think she is? That rifle's been in storage for 8 years." The weapons officer tried to maintain professionalism while suppressing a smile. He was about to refuse when Elena reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out an old magnetic keycard, the type that had been discontinued since 2017, the kind of clearance card that only existed for classified weapons programs. The laughter died in everyone's throats. The weapons officer stared at the card, recognizing the security classification, but not understanding what it meant. These cards were supposed to have been destroyed years ago when the program ended. "Where did you get this?" he asked quietly. Elena didn't answer immediately. She simply walked over to the locked case and inserted the card into a nearly invisible slot on the side. A soft beep echoed through the silent facility. The case unlocked with a heavy mechanical click that seemed to reverberate through everyone present. Inside lay the DSR Precision Talon, a sleek, black rifle that looked more like a piece of advanced technology than a traditional weapon. It had been untouched for nearly a decade, yet it gleamed as if it had been maintained daily. Elena lifted the rifle with the familiarity of someone who had held it thousands of times before. Her small hands found the grip points naturally. Her posture shifted into a stance that spoke of muscle memory developed over years of training. This rifle requires biometric synchronization. It only functions for its designated operator. She placed her palm on a scanner built into the rifle stock. The weapon came alive, lights flickered along its barrel, and a soft, synthetic voice announced, "Sync complete. User confirmed. Operator 327 authenticated." The training ground had become a tomb of silence. Elena looked up at the stunned faces around her, and for the first time since arriving at the base, she smiled. Not with arrogance, but with the quiet satisfaction of someone whose true identity had finally been revealed. "My name isn't Miss Maintenance, it's Operator 327, and I've been waiting 8 years to hold this rifle again. Plus, I served at Bremer Base when the Talon program was being tested, and I remember one person clearly. No rank, no name on the roster, but the only individual who could ever activate that rifle system. She disappeared from all records in 2018. Today I saw those same eyes, that same stance. There's no mistaking it. The weapons officer stood frozen, unsure whether to report this to command or simply watch what would happen next. Elena carried the Talon to the firing range, choosing the most difficult position available. Angled wind, target visible for only 4 seconds, maximum distance markers. She didn't use the standard scope setup. Instead, she adjusted the rifle's integrated light sensors and atmospheric readers, systems that most soldiers didn't even know existed. The Talon wasn't just a rifle, it was a precision instrument designed for operators whose missions required shots that conventional weapons couldn't make. Elena settled into position with the familiarity of someone who had held it thousands of times before. Her small hands found the grip points naturally. Her posture shifted into a stance that spoke of muscle memory developed over years of training. The target appeared for its brief 4-second window. One shot, no echo, no recoil sound, just a whisper, quiet discharge that spoke of advanced suppression technology. But the target board lit up dead center, red. The distance sensor displayed 1,920 meters, more than double the standard test distance. The control panel showed a message that made everyone's blood run cold. Talon synced, Operator 327, mission parameters exceeded. A SEAL instructor who had been watching whispered to his colleague, Operator 327? That's a classified call sign. Nobody knows who it belonged to, but the mission report said they once took out 4 enemy communication towers in a single night. Word spread quickly through the base communication channels. Within an hour, Colonel Jeffries, Elena's former commanding officer, had been contacted and was driving to the base. When he arrived and saw the data logs, he fell into a chair, as if the weight of 8 years had suddenly crashed down on him. There was only one person who could activate the Talon system, he said quietly, and I gave the order to erase her from all records because she refused to take a kill shot on a surrendering target. Elena had finished her demonstration and was carefully placing the Talon back in its case when Colonel Jeffries approached her. Elena, he said, using her real name for the first time in years. Or should I still call you 327? Elena is fine, sir. I've been Elena for 8 years now. Why didn't you tell me you were still alive? Why disappear into logistics? Elena looked at him with eyes that carried the weight of missions he could never fully understand. Because, sir, I needed to remember what it felt like to build things instead of destroying them. The Talon made me too good at killing. I needed to learn how to be good at living. Jeffries nodded slowly, understanding more than he wanted to admit. The mission report said you could make shots that other snipers declared impossible, but you walked away from the program because you wouldn't eliminate a wounded enemy who was trying to surrender. He was 19 years old, sir, bleeding out from shrapnel wounds. He dropped his weapon and was calling for his mother in Arabic. Taking that shot wouldn't have changed the mission outcome. It would have just made me into something I didn't want to become. The crowd of soldiers who had been listening stepped closer, realizing they were witnessing a conversation about classified operations that few people would ever hear. So you requested transfer out of special operations. I requested to disappear entirely. New identity, logistics assignment, no combat duties. I wanted to serve my country, but I wanted to do it by keeping weapons functional for people who needed them, not by using those weapons myself. Elena paused, looking at the Talon rifle. This weapon system was designed to eliminate threats that conventional forces couldn't handle, but it was also designed to turn its operator into something beyond human limitations. The biometric sync doesn't just read your vital signs, it alters them, makes you calmer, more precise, more detached. She closed the case with a soft click. I spent 3 years synced with this rifle. 3 years where taking a life felt as natural as breathing. When I finally broke sync and walked away, it took me months to remember how to feel guilt, how to hesitate, how to choose mercy over mission completion. One of the young soldiers who had mocked her earlier raised his hand tentatively. "Ma'am, if you were that good, why work in logistics? Why not train the next generation of operators?" Elena smiled sadly. Because teaching someone to kill is easy. Teaching them to remain human while they do it, that's the hard part. And some lessons can only be learned by choosing not to pull the trigger when everyone expects you to. Colonel Jeffries stood up and addressed the assembled soldiers. "What you've witnessed today is classified, but what you've learned about the weight of responsibility, about choosing when not to use your abilities, that's a lesson you'll carry for the rest of your lives." Elena began walking back toward the logistics building, but Colonel Jeffries called after her. "Elena, would you consider teaching a course, not weapons training, but decision-making under pressure, teaching soldiers when not to shoot?" She stopped and turned back. "I'll think about it, sir. But if I do, it won't be about the Talon. It'll be about the moments when the most courageous thing you can do is lower your weapon." I chose to remember that I was human. I eliminated the 6 armed targets, but I left the wounded boy alive. Then I destroyed the Talon targeting data and requested immediate extraction. Colonel Jeffries pulled out another file. "The after-action report says you suffered a catastrophic sync failure that compromised the mission and potentially exposed classified technology." That's what they wrote, yes, but the truth is simpler. I chose to fail rather than become a machine that couldn't distinguish between enemy combatants and wounded children. I witnessed recordings from Operator 327, a single shot that destroyed an antenna through a blizzard at 2,000 meters. Nobody believed it was real. Today, I saw that exact stance, that same breathing pattern. There's no mistaking the person behind those impossible shots. That evening, Elena was invited to a private meeting in the command office. Colonel Jeffries was waiting with classified reports from 2017 spread across his desk. They didn't call her Elena. They called her by her operational designation, Operator 327. Whisper Protocol. Elena nodded silently, not resisting the return to her former identity. She began to tell her story, one that had been classified so deeply that even thinking about it had felt like betrayal. "For 8 years, I was part of Project Whisper, an experimental weapons program that paired advanced rifle systems with operators who had specific biological markers. Heart rate variability, neural response patterns, stress hormone production. Only certain people could sync with the technology. The Talon rifle system was only one of 3 prototypes ever created. Each rifle was designed to interface directly with its operator's nervous system, creating a level of precision that bordered on superhuman. The biometric sync wasn't just authentication, it was integration. When connected to the Talon, my heart rate would drop to 40 beats per minute. My vision would adjust to see wind patterns invisible to the naked eye. I could calculate bullet drop, wind drift, and target movement simultaneously without conscious thought. Colonel Jeffries leaned forward. The mission reports from your active period are extraordinary. Eliminations at distances beyond what conventional snipers thought possible. 0 civilian casualties, perfect mission completion rate until Damascus, Elena said quietly. The room fell silent. The final mission. Intelligence identified a terrorist cell operating from a residential building. My orders were to eliminate all targets, no exceptions. When I reached the overwatch position, I could see 7 men with weapons and a teenager, maybe 16, who had been wounded in earlier fighting. Elena's voice remained steady, but her hands trembled slightly. The boy was trying to surrender. He had dropped his weapon and was attempting to crawl toward our forces with his hands visible. But my orders were clear. Eliminate all targets in the building. What did you do? I hesitated. For the first time since sinking with the Talon, I hesitated. The rifle's targeting system locked on the wounded boy and waited for my confirmation. All I had to do was squeeze the trigger. Elena stood and walked to the window, looking out at the mountain training ranges. But I couldn't do it. The sync began to break down because of my emotional conflict. The rifle system started malfunctioning, alarms going off in my earpiece. My handlers were screaming orders to take the shot. So you chose to break the sync entirely? I chose to remember that I was human. I eliminated the 6 armed targets, but I left the wounded boy alive. Then I destroyed the talent targeting data and requested immediate extraction. Colonel Jeffries pulled out another file. The after-action report says you suffered a catastrophic sync failure that compromised the mission and potentially exposed classified technology. That's what they wrote, yes, but the truth is simpler. I chose to fail rather than become a machine that couldn't distinguish between enemy combatants and wounded children. Elena returned to her chair. They gave me a choice: accept psychological reconditioning and return to active duty with the new rifle, or disappear entirely from all military records. I chose to disappear. Why logistics? Why this base? Because I wanted to serve in a way that preserved life instead of ending it. Every rifle I maintain, every scope I calibrate, every piece of equipment I repair, it might help someone else come home alive. That felt like a better use of my skills than creating more precise ways to kill people. Word had spread through the base about Elena's demonstration and her true identity. That night, several of the soldiers who had mocked her earlier came to apologize. Private Martinez, who had been the loudest in his ridicule, approached her during evening chow. "Ma'am, I owe you an apology, not just for today, but for not recognizing that experience comes in many forms." Elena looked at him with something approaching warmth. "You don't owe me anything, Private, but you do owe it to yourself to understand the weight of the weapons you carry. Every shot you take has consequences that extend beyond the target. Would you be willing to teach us, not marksmanship, but what you learned about making hard choices?" Elena was quiet for a long moment. What would you want to learn? How to be as good a soldier as you were, but still be able to live with ourselves afterwards. That weekend, Elena began teaching an unofficial course she called Silent Protocol. It wasn't about shooting, it was about not shooting. She would set up complex scenarios where students had to decide whether to engage targets or find alternative solutions. Many of the scenarios had no perfect answer, just choices between different types of responsibility. The most important skill a soldier can develop, she told her first class, isn't the ability to eliminate threats. It's the wisdom to recognize when eliminating a threat creates more problems than it solves. One student raised his hand. But what if hesitating gets people killed? Then you live with that responsibility too, Elena replied. But you also live with the knowledge that you considered every option before choosing to take a life. The talent system was designed to remove that consideration, to make killing as automatic as breathing. That's what made it so effective and what made it so dangerous. She gestured toward the weapons storage facility. Every rifle in that building is a tool. It can preserve life or end it, depending on the wisdom of the person holding it. Your training should focus as much on developing that wisdom as on developing your marksmanship. The unofficial classes grew in popularity. Soldiers would gather after their regular training to discuss ethics, decision-making under pressure, and the psychological weight of combat. Elena never used the Talon rifle in these sessions. She had made her point with that one perfect shot, and she never needed to make it again. But the rifle remained in its case, synced to her biometrics, waiting. A reminder that some capabilities, once developed, never truly disappear. They just wait for the right moment and the right choice to be called upon again. Type only one can wield if you believe power belongs to those who know when not to use it. A new training area was established, accessible only to those who passed Elena's unusual test, correctly identifying decoy targets and choosing not to shoot in 3 out of 5 scenarios. Elena designed challenges that had no clear right answers, forcing students to grapple with the complexity of real-world decisions. You have 5 seconds to choose, she would say. Save one person or eliminate the threat. But if you wait the full 5 seconds, both might survive through negotiations. What do you do? Most students chose quick solutions, but only those who waited the full 5 seconds were accepted into her advanced course. The weapon isn't what makes you dangerous, she explained to her students. It's the time you don't take before using it. That's what determines who you really are. Her students began calling the training area the delay range. On the wooden wall, someone had carved an inscription. True power isn't in the rifle. It's in the person who knows when to delay the shot. Elena's influence spread beyond formal training. Soldiers throughout the base began approaching problems differently, considering consequences they had never thought about before. The base's mission completion rates remained high, but the number of unnecessary engagements dropped dramatically. Soldiers were finding creative solutions to problems they would have previously solved with firepower. Colonel Jeffries noticed the change during monthly briefings. "Something's different about our personnel," he mentioned to Elena during one of their regular meetings. "They're more thoughtful, more strategic, less likely to escalate situations unnecessarily. They're learning to see their weapons as tools of last resort rather than first response," Elena replied. "It doesn't make them less effective, it makes them more precise in their decision-making." The unofficial Silent Protocol course had become so popular that the base officially recognized it as part of their advanced training curriculum. Elena was offered a formal instructor position with rank and benefits. She declined, preferring to keep her role unofficial and her impact personal rather than institutional. The moment this becomes official doctrine, she explained, it becomes just another set of rules to follow rather than wisdom to develop. These lessons work because each person has to choose to embrace them. During the winter months, Elena began working with soldiers who were struggling with the psychological aftermath of combat deployments. Her unique understanding of the weight of taking lives made her an effective counselor for those dealing with similar burdens. "You can't undo what you've done," she would tell them, "but you can choose how those experiences shape your future decisions. The guilt you feel isn't weakness, it's proof that you're still human." Private Martinez, who had become one of her most dedicated students, was selected for advanced sniper training at another facility. Before leaving, he asked Elena for advice. "Remember that every shot you don't take is as important as every shot you do. The talent system was designed to make that choice for you. Don't let any weapon, no matter how advanced, override your conscience." As Martinez prepared to leave, Elena handed him something wrapped in cloth. "This was my spotter scope from the Whisper program. It helped me see things that the rifle's targeting system missed. The humanity in the targets, the consequences beyond the mission parameters." Martinez unwrapped the scope with reverence. "Use it to see not just what you're aiming at, but what you're choosing to preserve by not pulling the trigger." The base had been transformed by Elena's presence, but she remained in the background, continuing her logistics work while occasionally teaching those who sought her wisdom. The Talon rifle remained in its secured case, its biometric locks still synced to Elena's unique signature, waiting for a crisis that would require its unique capabilities. Comment: I would wait if you believe patience is the most powerful weapon in a soldier's hands. One morning in early winter, Elena left the base, without fanfare or goodbye ceremonies. In the weapons storage facility, the Talon rifle had been returned to its case, alongside a handwritten note. "I am not taking this rifle with me, because I know there is someone else here who was grown mature enough to carry it responsibly." On the anniversary celebration at year-end, the base decided to preserve the Talon rifle as a monument rather than an active weapon. A new tradition was established. Whenever someone graduated from the advanced training program, they weren't immediately handed a weapon. Instead, they were asked a single question: "Are you certain you will not pull the trigger unless absolutely necessary?" Only those who could honestly answer yes received their final certification. Elena never returned to Alpine Ridge, but her influence remained embedded in the culture of the base. The Silent Protocol course became a permanent part of the curriculum, taught by instructors who had learned from Elena but adapted her lessons to their own understanding. The delay range was renamed the Richter range in her honor. Though Elena would never know about the tribute, years later, soldiers who had trained under Elena would find themselves in combat situations where her lessons saved lives, both enemy and friendly, by helping them choose patience over immediate action. Private Martinez, now a staff sergeant, would often tell new recruits about the woman who taught him that the hardest shots to make were the ones you chose not to take. "I knew someone once," he would say, "who could have been the deadliest sniper in military history. Instead, she chose to be the person who taught others how to stay human while carrying weapons of war." The Talon rifle remained in its display case, its biometric locks still synced to Elena's unique biological signature. Occasionally, new recruits would ask about the legendary weapon and the mysterious operator who could activate it. Instructors would tell them the story, carefully edited to remove classified details, of a soldier who walked away from perfect precision because she refused to sacrifice her humanity for mission efficiency. "Some weapons choose their wielder," they would explain, and some wielders choose to set their weapons down rather than become something they can't live with. Elena had found peace in obscurity, working in civilian logistics for a private security company, using her skills to ensure that others could do their jobs effectively while remaining true to their principles. She never spoke publicly about her military service, never wrote memoirs, never sought recognition for her contributions to military ethics and training. But late at night, when she heard news reports about conflicts resolved through negotiation rather than firepower, she would smile quietly and wonder if one of her former students had chosen to wait that extra 5 seconds before pulling the trigger. The Talon had been returned to its case, but its most important lesson remained active in the world: that true strength lies not in the ability to eliminate threats, but in the wisdom to recognize when not using that ability serves a greater purpose. If you believe these stories of honor and sacrifice deserve to be remembered, subscribe to Iron Heart Stories. Real people creating and telling stories, not mass-produced content. Some lessons should never be forgotten.